Welcome back to Business Intelligence. I have my co-host Joey DiGangi with me. My name is Dr. Wei-Chun Wan. We've decided to do an episode that hopefully will inform the general audience about the current status of the economy.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I have received many questions. People ask me, from my economic background, where this economy is heading. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is $1 million question, right? So apparently I don't have a crystal ball sitting in front of me to make any predictions or forecasts, but based on my training, I could provide you with a little bit more insight than just the stats that you get to review every single day.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us about what you do have sitting in front of you.
I I have a Panera Bread coffee cup in front of me, and I am a proud subscriber of the Panera Coffee subscription plan, and I pay $8.99 per month for it. And this morning I got an email from Panera Bread saying that they are increasing the price from $8.99 per month to $10.99 per month.
Mm-hmm.
And the $2, I could afford that $2, and I think a lot of people could afford $2. And $2 doesn't seem like a big jump in absolute value, right? But if you calculate that in terms of percentage, that's almost 25% increase,
right,
in the subscription plan. And this then reminds me of the stat that we recently just saw, in inflation rate in the March 2022. Year-over-year increase was 8.5% inflation rate. And that scares a lot of people, as well as the businesses that we been providing services to. Like a lot of businesses actually came to us asking, what do we need to do? I mean, do we need to prepare for a crash or a hard landing of the economy? And they asked me for advice and
what is the appropriate response?
Guidance. Exactly. What is the appropriate response? Now, before I answer the $1 million question, I want you to, not be too caught up with the simple number of inflation. It seems like in the past, especially quarter, people get too caught up with that just one inflation number. So in January, the year-over-year inflation rate was like 7.5%, and then February 2022, 7.9%, and then March 8.5%. People get caught up.
Right.
Now you should understand how the year-over-year number came about. Right. Remember, year-over-year means that we're comparing the number right now against the number last year, for the same time, right? So March 2022, if we were to compare the inflation against March 2021, we came to the conclusion that there was an 8.5% increase in the general price level, right? Now you have to remember, last March, we were very much still in the middle of the pandemic. Right. So consumption was low. At the time, the gas price was very low, actually, because people weren't traveling. So you had a relatively low benchmark to compare against, which naturally is going to increase the inflation rate that we see this year if we were to compare against last March, right? Not only that, you should also try to understand the composition of inflation. We are having a basket of goods and services that people generally consume, and we try to calculate the general price level based on the ordinary items that we consume on a daily basis. If you look at the what we call the core CPI, the core CPI actually excludes 4 important items. All right, the core CPI excludes gas, cars, building materials, and food services. If you exclude these 4 items, the core CPI in March, we're looking at a year-over-year inflation rate of negative 0.1%.
Right.
And that shouldn't shock everybody. But oftentimes when I share that negative 0.1% on the core CPI, year-over-year inflation rate, people were taken aback, right? Oh, what do you mean then? Are we in deflation? Well, you have to understand that the large ticket items that support your day-to-day, you got to have a place to live, you got to have some sort of transportation, you have to buy food, and these are the items that were being affected more significantly than others, right? That's what it means. But it also means that in fulfilling all these necessities, normal people do not have more to consume. do not have more disposable income to spend, because most people, they get caught up by these 4 big ticket items: gas, cars, building materials that affect the housing price, as well as the food services. So I wanted to reiterate, I do not have a crystal ball sitting in front of me to predict where the economy is heading. Are we going to be in a recession or not? But what I can say for sure is that we are definitely going to be experiencing a lot of ups and downs before we reach stability. So the economy is going to remain very volatile, because of the disruption in supply chain, which is still very much happening. You take a look at, for example, Shanghai, which is currently being locked down in China. If I were to kind of bring a little bit more perspective into this, Shanghai, the port of Shanghai handles cargo in terms of volume, 4 times larger than the port of San Pedro, Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
All right. And they're in lockdown. Right. So you're going to see more supply chain disruption on the horizon. There's no doubt about it. Not to mention that we have an ongoing international conflict that is going to affect the food price. Right. Because Ukraine, for example, is one of the largest food suppliers in wheat. Right. So everything is going to be affected, and that's not going to, bring the price level down in anytime soon in terms of, the big ticket items that I just talked about: gas, building materials, food, and cars. Right. So again, there will be more ups and downs in terms of the status of the economy in the coming months before we could even talk about stability. Right. And that, if you take a look at these coffee items like that I just shared with you, right? 24% increase in the subscription fee, $2 in absolute value. It doesn't seem a lot, right? But can you imagine that you have a 20-some percentage increase in the service that you want to provide to the marketplace, right? As a business owner, I don't think that you would be able to make that call right away. Right. Reason being that if you look at the absolute value, that's going to drive business away. That's going to drive demand away. For lower level items, like, if you start at like $8.99, $2 increase doesn't seem a lot, although percentage wise, it seems a lot. So think about the cheaper stuff, right? In absolute value, and who's buying the cheaper stuff? Right? Who can afford the cheaper stuff? It's people at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Right. Right. But percentage-wise, they're being affected more significantly than others. So what that means is that there are people that are disproportionately negatively affected by the inflation, a lot more than people with actually more resources. Exactly. Right. So if you're trying to sell something at 5-figure in the price tag, I don't think that you dare to raise the price by 20-some%. No. And still trying to keep the customers happy. Right. No, that's not gonna go over well. That's not gonna cut it, right? No. That's not gonna cut it. Now, also to think about the fact that, can you imagine that, if we were to say, all right, 8.5% increase in the general price or inflation level, I am going to go ahead and ask my employer to give me an 8.5% raise. How many people could get a raise like that? Right. Not many. Not many, right? Obviously, depending on your discipline and depending on, how much control that you have in the particular discipline that you're operating in. Not many people could get that 8.5% increase. So, which means that you're not going to be able to, most of us are not going to be able to have a salary increase enough to counter the inflation rate. Right? Yeah, exactly. And even if you were to get 8.5% increase, that's breaking even. Yeah, you're not gaining anything in real purchasing power. Right. Right. So what that means is, again, we're going to see a lot of ups and downs. The unemployment rate, which is still being calculated, will be launched and announced very soon. And without seeing the number, I could pretty much say to you that we're going to have a pretty low unemployment rate. You know why? Because based on the core CPI, you see already the negative 0.1%, excluding all these four bigger ticket items. You're already seeing that people are running out of resources to cover their daily needs. Right? Which means that for those people that want to get employed, they've probably already found a job. The unemployment rate is going to be low. The problem is whether we would have more jobs covering those people that are still looking for jobs, or whether we have jobs that pay good enough to cover the standard cost of living for those people that are working, right? And I think that's going to be the determinant of how long the ups and downs will continue in the economy. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot to unpack. I will have to say it again. I don't know where this economy is heading, but in a short while, the pandemic, the effect by pandemic is still going to linger. The COVID policy is not universal across the globe, which really causes the supply chain disruption to be a real challenge because of the previous effort in globalization. We actually in the United States rely very heavily, in previous episodes we talked about this, very heavily in services and products produced in other countries, for all the right economic reasons. And also, I mean, you know, if you are of the political background, you could argue that globalization, it is because of globalization that we were able to link all these countries together, so that maybe you don't agree with each other's ideology, but you all are contributing to each other's prosperity. So that actually bring the entire world closer to peace, right? Arguably, in an ideal situation. But look at how much Germany is suffering, for example. Germany is banking on Russia for the energy source, right? And now that the Western world is banging the natural gas supply by Russia, and Germany is being caught between a hard place and a rock, right? Well, luckily we're in spring now, so hopefully the energy use or the energy requirement demand is not going to be as significant. But still, because of the globalization, Germany has been banking on the supply of natural gas from Russia for years, to a point that several years ago they decided to do away with nuclear power because of environmental concern and security concerns. Now what do? Because the over-reliance on a certain supplier, that supply chain, it's not a switch. You can't turn it on and off. Once it's off, you have to immediately find alternatives, which explains why, I mean, even during the international conflict between Russia and Ukraine, even though after Germany announced that they basically denounced what Russia is doing, they still import natural gas from Russia. Right, for economic reasons, right? So what do they do? What do we do, right? So we've been hearing a lot of conversations about deglobalization, how do we look forward? Now, these are really big topics, right? Above the economy, above individual businesses. And why do I talk about this? Because I think it actually informs all business owners to really review their operations and how you prepare for the quote unquote ups and downs in the economy. I would argue that every business should agree with me in one approach, that is, all the times you need to keep a very closer look at the operating expenses. Right. It doesn't matter how many items that you have. It doesn't matter how well resourced that you are. You always have to make sure that you are operating your business in the most efficient way possible.
I think going back for as long as we've been doing this podcast, we've talked about that. And we always said during good times and bad times, you need to keep a very close watch on operational expenses. When things are good, how can you preserve that advantage? And when things are not as good, how can you weather the storm until it's over? And that's always been a big focus. And I think that's one of the number one strategies that we would advise any of our clients that are coming in trying to navigate the volatility right now. Start with revisiting your operational expense.
And when we focus on operating expenses, we we want the bottom line to enhance, right? Obviously.
Right.
But then what about the top line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the coffee strategy by Panera Bread, right?
Right.
The subscription plan came about when they really wanted to increase the foot traffic to their stores.
Right.
And you would argue that even at the current pricing strategy, $8.99, that's a loss. I mean, if you stop by Panera Bread to grab a coffee every single day, or several times a day, I mean, actually, you could actually get a cup of coffee every 2 hours if you are on the subscription plan.
Oh, okay.
Right. So let's just assume that you do it just for one time, 20 days per month.
Mm-hmm.
That's a loss for Panera Bread.
Right.
But if you look at their annual report, I bet you because of the implementation of subscription plan, they were able to sell more menu items.
Oh, yeah.
Just because of the increase in foot traffic.
Right.
Now they effectively raise the awareness using the item that carries the highest markup in their store. And they sacrifice that markup trying to sell more menu items. Right. And the same strategy was implemented by McDonald's. Right. Remember the summer pricing of McDonald's? They always have the 99 cents large drink.
Oh, right.
Right. 99 cents, that's a money losing endeavor. Well, think about, yes, all the soft drinks, the cost is really low, but they get you in the store.
Right.
You're going to try to get the nuggets.
You're going to go in there, you're going to smell the fries. You're not walking out with just the soda.
That's exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
So not only you have to be very mindful of the bottom line, what about the top line, the pricing strategy, right? $2 increase, not so much in the subscription plan, but that's going to enhance their top line significantly.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Right. So now from the business perspective, yeah, we know the economy is I don't know whether there's going to be soft landing or hard landing but volatility is to be expected.
Right.
So what do we do then? Strategy wise, what would the business owners have to do to really look out for what's going to happen?
So I think there are three general strategies that we'll discuss, and we talked about the first one, which is really analyzing the operating expenses, seeing where there you can trim the fat a little bit, really kind of make sure you're keeping a lean operating model, so you can preserve whatever what profits you have right now. We're gonna make I think a fair assumption that the cost of goods sold, based on everything you shared about with the supply chain, is going to remain either fixed or go up. So really focusing on the operating expenses on the balance sheet.
That's right.
Or on the profit and loss statement.
Right.
That's a big area that we'll want to analyze with a client. I think when we talk about top line, I think for some of the lower ticket items, adding some of those higher marginal increases, if it carries a low absolute value, we're seeing a lot of companies employ that. You talked earlier though about what about for the company that offers the 5-figure project.
Right.
Or product. I think when we look at those kinds of companies, we can have some price increase just on the basis of needing to improve the pricing, but beyond that, we'll tell them to look at your value proposition. How if you can't you can't justify a $2,000 increase on an item that was previously $10,000 just on the basis of changing the price.
Right.
But if you can find more creative ways to enhance that value proposition to justify in the minds of the consumer, I think that's a strategy at least that's worth visiting. If you can get the perception that yes, I am getting at least $2,000 more worth of value, that's an important strategy to consider if you're operating in that space.
And if you're a business owner, by the way, that's a fantastic summary. But if you're a business owner, I mean, be on the lookout.
Right.
Because when your people are feeling the pressure of inflation, they're going to turn around and pressure you to give them a higher pay. Right. And then when that happens, you have a couple choices, right? You need to really review how many people you need in running your operations, and number two, whether or not, or if so, how much can you transfer that cost back to the consumers, right? So again, I don't want you to be caught between a hard place and a rock, right? Because when that happens, you then have to worry about how many customers are you're gonna lose, right? So there is an intricate balance between how you operate and how you interact with the general market, knowing that there is pricing pressure everywhere, right? I do have some hope that the general inflation rate is going to hold steady in the coming months. But like I said, the volatility is going to still be there. You really need to start reviewing your value chain, sooner than later. And quite honestly, I think the personnel structure, who can handle the personnel structure better, will win out. Yeah. So I hope that we provided you with some insight that you previously not thought about, and we're going to keep sharing our observations and insight with you in the marketplace. And if you have any question, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, you can reach Chung, myself, and the rest of our team wherever you're listening or viewing. The link is right in the description. Reach out anytime. We'll be happy to discuss strategy with you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah.